This tutorial is going to focus on feedback for the weather end of topic assessment that you will have recently completed. The best way to use this feedback is to pause the video after each question, think about the information I have communicated about what you should have written, and consider whether you feel you have communicated all those key ideas in your answer. And if you feel you haven't, or there is a certain aspect of the question that you didn't get right, or maybe you didn't understand, then you want to make sure you write that down or record that, because that is something that you're going to need to practice at a later date. Let's have a look at question 1. In question 1, we are presented with this synoptic weather chart showing the weather in Belfast and Stockholm that we can see on the weather map here. We can also see a cold front and a warm front stretching across the weather map. Key information is that this is based on the 15th of January 2010. We are given a description of the weather in Belfast and Stockholm, and that is communicated through the synoptic weather symbol. So a skill required here is your ability to understand and read those synoptic weather symbols. We are told that the wind direction in Belfast is from the southwest at 25 knots, with rain, 10 degrees and 8 octaves. Stockholm, in contrast, has wind coming from the northwest with 5 knots, 2 degrees centigrade, 1 octave of cloud cover, and there is no weather at all. Once we understand that that is the weather happening in these two places, we have to look at the question. The question asks us to give reasons for the differences in the weather. We are not being asked to say what those differences are, although we would have to obviously do that in order to answer this question, but we are marked for offering reasons. Let's start with what is probably the easiest reason, which is the fact that Belfast has rain and Stockholm has nothing. Why is that? If we look at the weather map, we can see that a warm front has recently just passed Belfast. Belfast lies just to the west of that warm front, which, because warm fronts are always moving from west to east, that means the warm front must have arrived recently, which is why Belfast is raining. Stockholm, in contrast, is nowhere near a weather front. The nearest weather front is right across the sea in Germany down here. So there's no weather front nearby, and that is why Stockholm has no rain. So there's your first mark. Difference in rainfall is to do with the fact that one of the places has a weather front nearby. What about the difference in temperature? Well, Belfast is much warmer. You might even say 8 degrees warmer than Stockholm. Why is that? First of all, because Belfast is in the warm sector. It's within this area that I'm indicating on the weather map. It is between the two weather fronts, known as the warm sector. So this is all warm air. This whole area is a warm air mass, and that's why it's warmer. Stockholm, in contrast, is on the other side. It's up here to the north of all these fronts, so it is in the cold sector, and therefore it's going to be colder. So that's a first reason you might communicate. The second reason you might communicate is that Stockholm lies slightly further north. It's got a more northerly latitude than Belfast. It's further away from the equator. And because of that, distance from the equator is a factor that influences temperature because of the curvature of the Earth. That's why Stockholm might be colder. Right, so we could have offered one or probably two reasons, possibly two reasons for the difference in temperature. So why the difference in wind direction? Well, this is where we need to start looking at the isobars, not the weather fronts. So the wind direction in the Belfast, this is a low pressure area. How do we know it's low pressure? Well, it's because we're in an area between two weather fronts. Automatically, that must be low pressure. These weather fronts come with low pressure air systems. We also have 1004, which is very close to the 1000, and it's certainly lower than Stockholm, which is near the 1016 line. So Belfast has lower air pressure. Because it's got lower air pressure, the winds travel in an anti-clockwise direction. So they will be traveling anti-clockwise as I'm just tracing across. And that's why they are coming from the southwest. In contrast, Stockholm has higher air pressure. We can see it's 1016, which means winds are traveling in a clockwise direction. So if we do clockwise, that means the wind is traveling around this way, following the direction of the clock. I'm just following this 1016. It would be going up here, and then it would be coming down and going around southwards. So at the moment, it's coming from the northwest. Likewise, down here, it would be coming from the northwest. So that is why Stockholm has a different direction, because it's high pressure with winds traveling in a clockwise direction. Okay, so why is there a difference in wind speed? Well, we can see that Belfast has 25 knots compared to only 5 in Stockholm. So it's 20 knots stronger winds. Why is that? It's quite simple to say that the isobars are much closer together in Belfast than they are in Stockholm, which is why Belfast has stronger winds. Final point you want to communicate is, why do we have a difference in cloud cover? Well, Belfast is near the warm front. Warm fronts bring clouds, cumulonimbus clouds, and that is why we have 8 octaves of cloud cover. In contrast, Stockholm only has 1 octa because it's in an area of high pressure, and obviously high pressure, the air sinks, clouds can't form, and therefore it's likely to be much clearer skies. Okay, I've included more than 5 reasons for the 5 marks, but how many of those points do you think you recorded were in your answer? How many did you attempt but you got wrong, do you feel? And therefore, what area of that answer maybe needs a little bit more practice? You want to now pause the video and make a record of any differences you think you've recorded or written in your answer compared to the answer you'd be looking to give to this question. Okay, now let's look at the next exam question. So in this exam question, you are thinking about this weather map, which is based in January 2010, and you're being asked to describe the likely weather that Glasgow is experiencing for 4 marks. Now, I'm going to walk through what you should have considered and what you should have written. I'd like to think about the points I make, and then think about whether these match points you are likely to make. If there's any particular area that I talk that you don't understand or you don't think you are likely to have used in your answer, then make sure you write that down. So let's have a little think, first of all, about the question. It does say describe. Now, that means we're not being asked to give reasons for Glasgow's weather. We've just got to say what the weather is. I will give you the reasons as a means of revising this particular weather map, but your answer should not do that. So the first thing we have to clock into is that it is January, okay? And it's the 21st of January. So temperatures are likely to be very low in Glasgow because of the time of year, okay? And that's a legitimate point to make. Let's think about the Synoptic Weather Map, though. So what other information can we get from this? Well, this is high pressure. And the reason you know it's high pressure is because the air pressure is 1028, 1036, 1020. This is a very high pressure. So there's without any doubt that this is a high pressure. So everything you write about must be linked to the type of weather you get with high pressure. Okay. I now want to think about temperature a little bit more deeply than just in January. High pressure brings cloudless weather because the air is sinking. Now that's all explanation, okay, which you're not being asked. You're just being asked to describe. But because there aren't any clouds in the sky and it's January, the temperature is going to be very low. So it's going to be very cold. Cold or very cold would have had to be in the description for temperature that you would have to have made. Second thing, you would be saying that there is going to be no rain. Now, once again, you're not being asked to tell me why there is no rain, but had you been asked to explain the likely weather or give reasons, then you could have said because there are no weather fronts nearby. Or you could have said because it's high pressure and the air is sinking and therefore clouds can't form, which would bring rain. But you're not asked any of that. You're just asked to say there is no rain. So what do we have so far? It's very cold temperatures and there's likely to be no rain. Now, the next thing is wind. Now, this is high pressure. So the first thing we need to say is there's going to be very little wind. Now, if we were asked to give a reason for that, we could say it's because it's high pressure and air travels away from areas of high pressure. So there's going to be mild winds. You could say it's going to be very little wind because the isobars are very far apart, which they are. Okay. And that means that there's very little wind. But all you're being asked to say in your answer is that there is going to be mild or no wind. Let's think about the wind direction. Now, air in high pressure moves clockwise this way that I'm indicating on the screen. So wind is going to be coming this way. So from the southwest or west would have been what you'd write. So just the wind direction is from the southwest or west. Of course, if you're giving a reason for that, then you have to say because wind's traveling in an anti-clockwise direction in high pressure. Sorry, in a clockwise, beg your pardon, just let me correct that, in a clockwise direction in high pressure. So we've talked about the temperature, we've talked about the wind speeds, we've talked about the wind direction, and we've talked about the fact that there is no rain. Final thing you could say is the sky is likely to be clear, or there will be very few clouds. Now, the reason for that is, once again, because it's high pressure and the air is sinking and therefore clouds don't form. Or you can also say that there aren't any weather fronts near Glasgow that would abort cloud, and that's why it's going to be a cloudless day. So 4 statements about the likely weather, no need to explain. But if you come across this question which asks you to give reasons, I've also explored the give reasons. Now pause the video at this point and reflect on how much of that did you understand. Are there any particular areas that you weren't clear on and you think you maybe didn't use in your answer? And make sure you record them down. Let's have a look at the third exam question. We have a weather symbol for February 4th, 2020 in London, and we're asked to simply describe the weather for 3 marks. Now, to get the 3 marks, you have to talk about every aspect of this weather symbol. This bit's easy. This is the temperature. So temperature 6 degrees. This symbol is the weather symbol, and that indicates drizzle. So you should have drizzle in your answer. The spoke sticks out pointing to the southwest, so we have a southwesterly wind. We have a long tick, which is 10 knots. And we have an almost fully coloured in circle, but with a white strip down the centre, which indicates 7 octaves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 key points to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order to achieve your 3 marks. And if you're missing one of them, or you made a correction, you'll drop to 2. And if you've only included up to no more than 2 of those things, then you would only get 1 mark. So have a reflection. How much of that do you think you're secure on? And note down any problems about reading these weather symbols that you might have. Which bit are you maybe not sure about? Is it the wind speed, the wind direction? Is it the cloud cover? Is it the weather symbols? Are you maybe not too sure about these? Or is it this number here, the temperature? Okay, pause the video now, have a reflection, and let's go on to question 4. Right, question 4 is really about decoding what an anticyclone is, or areas of high pressure. Now, you might not get given that piece of information in an exam. You might just be reliant on it saying an anticyclone. Bring different weather conditions throughout the year. Now, the question very specifically asks you to describe the benefits and problems of an anticyclone remaining over Scotland for a long period of time during the summer. So anything you write in your answer that doesn't relate to the summer will not get credit. If your answer doesn't contain some benefits and some problems, you also won't get full marks. Most importantly, if your answer doesn't connect with the type of weather you get with high pressure, then you're also going to start losing marks. So let's just reflect on high pressure weather in summer. The first thing is, in summertime, high pressure weather brings the warmest temperatures because we have cloudless days. And in summertime, that means all of the sunlight can get to the surface. And because in summertime the sun is more directly overhead, this means that the weather is going to be very hot. So anything that relates to hot weather for a prolonged period of time, any points you make about the benefits or problems of that will get you marks. Let's also think about the fact that you're going to have very little in the way of wind because high pressure, once again, brings very mild winds. So anything that relates to the lack of wind, whether that's positive or negative, will get you marks. The final aspect of high pressure for a long period of time is that high pressure is going to bring you very little, if any, rainfall. Rainfall tends to be linked to low pressure weather systems. So we're going to get very little rain or none for a long period of time. So any points you make that have related to very dry periods over a long period of time are going to get you marks. Now, I'm not going to rattle through that, but did your answer focus on benefits and problems? Did you go just beyond talking just about hot temperatures, but also maybe think about lack of wind or maybe lack of rainfall? Because those are all 3 likely weather conditions that you're going to get for a long period of time. Okay, pause the video now, write a reflection whether you think your answer targeted that successfully, those 4 marks, and whether you fully understand the weather that comes with high pressure. Okay, let's move on to the final exam question. We have a weather map showing you 5 air masses. And the question quite specifically says, describe the origin and the main weather characteristics of, and it's 2 of them, tropical continental and polar maritime. Right, let's just have a think. Let's go to the tropical continental. Now, on this weather map, it shows the tropical continental coming from mainland Europe. But the origin of this air mass is actually North Africa, from the Sahara Desert. So you should have a statement saying the origin of the tropical continental is from Africa. or North Africa or the Sahara Desert. It's not enough to say it comes from the continent or from Europe, because it's actually coming from much further south than that. The weather characteristics, well, there's two key weather characteristics we tend to talk about with air masses, is that you are going to get hot temperatures and you're going to get dry weather conditions or lack of rainfall with this air mass. Right, the other air mass, polar maritime, we can see that's coming from up here. And you're going to want to say that its origin is the North Atlantic, or you could actually say from Greenland or northern Canada, because that's where the air actually originates from. So its origin is North Atlantic, Greenland, or northern Canada. Now, what weather conditions are we going to get? Well, it's a maritime air mass. So the first thing you want to say about maritime air masses is that they are going to bring wet weather conditions. You don't need to tell me why. It's obviously because they're coming across an ocean. That's why they're called maritime. You just have to say wet. And because it's polar, it's going to bring cold winds, cooler air temperatures. And that's it. In order to get the full 4 marks, you need one statement of origin linked to its geographical area and at least one weather characteristics for each of your 2 air masses. It's possible you might get asked the same for the South Atlantic for this one, or the polar continental would be Siberia, or the Arctic would be the Arctic Ocean. But as you aren't asked about these 3, they shouldn't appear in your answer. Okay, I would pause the video in a second. What you're going to think about when all of these is, with all 5 questions, have I answered these successfully? Do I feel I've got 4 marks? And is anything that you're hearing in this video maybe not present in your answer? Because it could be in an answer in future if you get asked this question. And finally, before you do leave, if at any point any of this material, any of the other material in the weather topic you're feeling you don't fully understand, then could I recommend, first of all, you go to the revision checklist available in the Google Classroom, and you scroll down to the weather topic, and there you will find links to all of the key learning outcomes, many of which were assessed in this assessment. You can watch these videos to find out more information. You'll find some of the exam questions, for example, describing air masses, which was one of the questions, are fully explored in this tutorial. Second location that you can visit is the website. And if you go to the weather part of the website, you'll find that same checklist there. You'll find some model questions. You'll find a link to the weather and climate chalk talks, which reviews a number of the key exam questions, as well as some more videos and content exploring different themes in the weather topic. And that helps you consolidate and relearn some of the material that we covered in class. Finally, at the bottom of that, you will find a web link to the BBC Bite Size, which also allows you to prepare more successfully for this particular weather topic. And likewise, you can use the question and answers paper, revision booklet you've been given, or the How to Pass booklet on this topic to really master your learning in this area.